Malcolm Hoenlein is with us, Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. We call this the Weekly Update. Mr. Hoenlein is back in the United States. Mr. Hoenlein, welcome back to JM and the AM.
Thank you. It's good to be back, but it was better at home in Yerushalayim, talking to you and experiencing an amazing Sukkot and all of the remarkable visitors, the president, the vice president, the secretary of state, again the secretary of state,
wow,
and many military visitors as well.
Yeah, and don't forget
really an endless list.
And don't forget the negotiators. The negotiators, as they're known, with a capital N. They were in Israel as well. A reminder to everybody that we have not spoken with Malcolm since the end of Sukkot, because last Friday he was attending the funeral of Rabbi Moshe Hauer, who, of course, was taken from us suddenly. And I'm sure Malcolm, before the end of this discussion, will note his passing. But I say this, Malcolm, just in terms of the timing, because we never really got your review, your feelings about being there on the spot in Jerusalem on Hoshana Rabbah as the President of the United States is speaking in the Knesset, and as so many of the final living hostages were coming home to Israel. Is there a way, I know it's hard to do al regel achas, but all these days later, is there a way for you to encapsulate what all that was like in the Holy Land?
Well, it was such a whirlwind that it's only in hindsight that I really can consider and think about the implications, which are many, mostly good, but some of concern, of all the developments of the last 3-4 weeks, actually. But the visit of the president was seen as very significant by most people. There was some concern about, everybody darshans every single word that the president said. Didn't say much of the speech. He winged. He had a prepared text, and as they kept noting, the teleprompter in Israel worked as opposed to the United Nations.
And he liked to ad lib.
Yeah, he did, and others did. But the spirit in the room was really remarkable, and the message, by and large, was extremely supportive. But it paled in comparison, frankly, to the release of the hostages. And there was such a national sigh of relief when the living hostages came home, just as there was continued anticipation, even today, over the release of the remaining 13, 8 of whom Israel says they have identified. The Hamas knows where they are. There is talk of several being released today.
Wow.
And, for the families, the return of even of a deceased relative is very significant. And the Gemara says that a family doesn't have rest until the deceased loved one finds final kavura, final resting place in Israel. And they're very emotional, the funerals, and they're but it's a national resurgence. And I noted to people that the difference in Israel is they don't burn the flag, they enhance the flag, they embrace the flag, even if they're protesting. And there is still such a strong commitment. Today, one of the hostages released 2 weeks ago went in uniform and rejoined his outfit for a commemoration, and says he wants to join. And many of the others say they want to go back and serve. One young woman already re-enlisted with her unit after, of course, seeing all that they had seen and experiencing what they did. And the resilience of these people, if you look at their comments, but most of all, if you look at the love that is expressed when they're reunited, it should be an inspiration to all of us. I once heard Rav Pam Zatzal talk about the fact when he goes to went to an airport, he used to stand for a while at the gate to watch how people greeted their loved ones coming off the planes or coming, to meet them. And he said that's the way a Rebbe should greet his Talmidim every day, and that's the way parents should greet their children. And I was thinking about it many times. When you see the love, that should be present all the time. And all the divisiveness in Israel is so counterproductive and so destructive at a time when we still have many extreme challenges. Today, there were many raids in Lebanon. There are still challenges in Gaza, the future of Gaza. We talk about all of the conditions that have been set, and the visitors, the military visitors, the fact that you have army troops inside Israel who are there more to monitor Israel and the ceasefire. All of the developments. It's so overwhelming, and to see how the people of Israel still cherish the U.S.-Israel relationship, that the flags that were waving, the people lining the streets, waiting for even all the inconvenience with closed roads, and at a time when they're building the light railroad everywhere, which blocks streets anyway, then to have the streets blocked again. But people are very tolerant of it and accept it, and the feeling towards President Trump was very evident. The respect shown him in the Knesset, which is not always a place where you have such decorum, and the cheering crowds, and the same, to a lesser degree, a greater degree to others. Marco Rubio was certainly received extremely warmly, and he gave a remarkable address at the opening of the road from Shiloh Pool, the Pilgrims Road, which I hope everybody will get to see once it's fully open. But now you can relive the steps that those who are Ole Regel, those who went to the Temple Mount, you can walk all the way from the Shiloh Pool under the old city wall and come up at the Kotel. And this is such an historic development. And when I heard both Rubio and Huckabee, without notes, give the most emotional and Bible-based speeches that you can imagine, and the spirit that was there, and leading citizens of all kinds, Jan Koum and Bill Ackman and people from Mark Levin, and such a wide array of people who were invited to and came specially to, and what we have talked about so many times on this show, that people don't dismiss these things. It's our heritage. These are the deeds. We are reliving the Bible, and when Tanakh comes to life in these events, they saw it. They spoke about it. Too often we don't. And I want to encourage it. And I have to tell you that the spirit there was so unbelievable. And but there are other visits, the vice president's visit also, and he took umbrage at the vote in the Knesset, which Netanyahu has dismissed and said was a political stunt. And but the damage is done. And when the president has to come out and say, we will never let them annex, and these repeated messages, doesn't help the cause, it hurts it.
Oh, I hear that. Just a couple of details. I don't know why I'm so curious about it, but is there a way for you to report on the general condition of the most recent living hostages? Are these folks going to have to spend an inordinate amount of time in the hospital? Are most of them already home? Do you know anything about what's happened in the days since they got back to Israel?
Yes, I as you know, we were in touch with the families all along, and I met with the families, some of the families, just in the days before the release, and some of the hostages who came home have come home, but that's part of the rehab. It's not that their treatment is over. You cannot be 2 years in a dungeon and just walk into life, but the strength and the resilience and the fact that they have demonstrated, and how many of them in the tunnels all of a sudden, started doing being Jewish, doing things, the one who just talked about how they rocked the tunnel every Friday night, singing Semiros, stuff we didn't know before. But how many of them found God in the tunnels and would say Shema every day and would do other things which they didn't do before. And that the parents who lit candles every Friday night, and you see pictures from this past Friday night of the hostages standing with their mothers as they lit candles Friday night and did other things. These are all stories that will yet be told. There'll be a lot of books written on it. I'm sure Pesach Krom will get a lot of volumes out of it, and many others. And I say that respectfully, that these stories have to be told. They're so inspiring. They're so remarkable.
So I don't want to use...
Many of them, you saw the one whose picture emaciated digging his own grave. You can see that they fatten them up before they leave, but all of these people will have to go through
fatten them up. That's poetic license. Fatten them up.
They do.
No, I mean, they add pounds to them, but they're way far away from fattening up. Yeah.
Yes, but the remarkable statements, and look at today, even guys who went back to their units and to thank them for their support and to thank them for I mean, it's unbelievable when you think of the sacrifice that they made. They had every reason, to behave in a different way, but it's not true. That's who they are, and I think we can be inspired by it.
Oh, 100%. I wouldn't use the word revival for obvious reasons, but the revitalization of Jewish observance and attention to ritual throughout the country, not just among the hostages, but the country, has been unbelievable during this war. Pretty remarkable. So you would predict, and again, I know you don't like predictions, but based on what you know, your educated guess would be the majority of the remaining 13 will likely be home soon. Would that be a safe comment to make?
I think that is safe, that 2, maybe today, maybe more. The pressure on them to return them has to be sustained, and that means the allies who are there and non-allies who are there operating in Gaza today have to keep the pressure on them. But it's not just the return of the hostages. We have to look at the day after. We want to know who's going to be governing, how they're going to disarm them. Hamas says they're going to refuse to disarm. This is a key component of the implementation of a deal. There are other conditions that have to be met as well. We know that sorry.
No problem. It's that change of season, Malcolm.
And a good percentage of the tunnels still remain, maybe 40%, maybe more even. And that they have still a large supply of weapons, including sophisticated weapons. So they have not been disarmed. They have not been dismantled. That has to happen if we're going to have stability in Gaza. And the onus should be on the Muslim brotherhood countries, on Turkey and Qatar, and all of those who support them, not to allow Turkish troops into Gaza. That would be a very big mistake. And Israel obviously is objecting to it. But to let all of them hold to account the leadership of Hamas and make them deliver on the promises. And I think President Trump has been very adamant and very strong.
Well, the only thing I'd add is far beyond the refusal to disarm, they're actually killing, Gazans in the street. Those who they're accusing of lining up with Israel. I would suspect others as well. But, we've seen this actually happen via video. We've seen it. And it is amazing to me. And I get that the United States pressure is important. And I understand that the disarming is key. But the fact that this is being allowed to be done with very little reaction, practical reaction from those partners that you just mentioned, is very disturbing.
But not surprising, and has stopped. I mean, they have put pressure because of the public exposure, especially that picture where they lined up 6 or 7, quote, collaborators. But many of them Many of them are leaders of clans, and people don't understand the structure of Palestinian society in these areas. They really are led by clans, and some of the clans have turned against Hamas, and there are courageous statements being made by people in Gaza, against Hamas's leadership, against Hamas's role, calling for it, but they're clan-based, and the whole society, and the differences between clans can be very vicious. They fight. They don't even intermarry. People in the West Bank and people in the coastal regions of the Palestinians didn't intermarry. There were huge divisions. But the clans was the way that it should have been dealt with initially. You empower them. They know how to keep control over their areas, something, Arabs told me for a long time. Not only there, but in other areas as well. And it was behind the attempt at emirating the Yehud and Shomron, trying to create mini emirates where the sheikhs would be empowered in their area. And, there's still people who are advocating it, but it seems the PA really cracked down on those who said they would be part of it, mostly from the Hebron area.
Is it like that in other parts of the Arab world? In Syria, is there clan grouping as well?
So that's a good question. The answer is it's multiple things. There are clans within each of the groups, but you have the division really is Druze, Kurds, Alawites, Christians, and you have Sunnis, Shiites now that were imported by Iran and populated a lot of the areas when they displaced the population. So you have divisions along ethnic lines and religious lines. But you also do have some clan structure within the society. In Lebanon, of course, the big division was Christian-Muslim, but the Christian population is diminished. But you have also there Druze population that is significant. You have other populations, and they artificially constructed a division between giving the presidency to a Christian and the prime ministership to a Muslim, but the Muslims really rule. Mm-hmm. And the question is, will they exercise the influence over the areas and root out the Hezbollah influence? So far, Hezbollah has not been disarmed. Israel today eliminated a number of key Hezbollah activists or terrorists, and continues to operate against the violations of the ceasefire agreement, hitting arms caches and other things, which shows that they are still active. The people in Lebanon, I think, largely want them out, but you have huge Palestinian refugee camps. You know, the Palestinians there were never allowed to work. They weren't given work permits. They couldn't become doctors, lawyers, anything. They're only menial labor, but they weren't given citizenship, and they were never given, but nobody, of course, will write about that, as opposed to going into the hospitals in Jerusalem and seeing how many Arab doctors and nurses and et cetera that you see there. So the true story about the structure of those societies is really critical, because that's how you can construct something. And like in Syria, I think I would favor certainly a coalition of all of those ethnic groups creating a council and having somebody over it. There's a lot of opposition still to Shara. You don't read about it here, but I can tell you within the country, there's growing opposition, in fact, to Shara. And there were some incidents in Idlib, which was his home base, which has exacerbated that.
It's America's one and only Jewish Moments in the Morning radio program, heard on listeners-sponsored digital radio around the world, the web at NachumSegal.com and the Nachum Segal Network, and, of course, on the beloved NSN app. I remind everybody that new development for this week and this season is that our interviews are now available on YouTube, which is being used by about half the country and half the world as a podcast platform. Just go to Nachum Segal Network on YouTube, subscribe, and this conversation, all of our conversations this week, you will find on that page. I'll give you a leeway on this because I really don't know what what your reaction was. As you see the 60 Minutes interview, and in general, as you see the way the negotiators are describing the process of getting to this point, any comment, any feeling one way or the other about the description of this entire thing?
It's certainly a complicated process. The 60 Minutes interview made headlines, particularly because they said that Israel, that they were... not just they're dismayed, I think was the word they used. I forgot what was the exact word. But if you look at it, they said they were a little bit troubled by it, essentially. But the headlines never said a little bit. And the fact is that they're trying to maybe establish a record for the Qataris and everybody else to see that they did not play a role in this. But, one of the concerns that you hear analysts and people talk about in Israel is are we creating a vassal state? Will we have to get American approval for every move we make? Stuff like that.
Correct.
I don't believe that that's the intent, and certainly not the presence of the troops. Or
to put it differently, do these interviews and discussions weaken the power of the Prime Minister of Israel?
For some it challenges it and raises concern. Look, basically people really are very appreciative of what the president did, of the deal, getting out of the war. I mean, it's a huge national sigh of relief. Would they have liked a more decisive outcome? In some cases, yes. People would have liked to see Hezbollah and Hamas completely destroyed. But they did a remarkable job. And when you remember that it was a 7-sided war against Israel, when you think about what this little country did against Iraq together with the United States, these are all remarkable. The U.S.-Israel alliance is really vital for Israel's security, for the stability of the region. And I had the opportunity to speak to some Arab leaders over the last few weeks, and they certainly reflected. I do believe that the Abraham Accords can have a big future, and a lot of stuff is happening quietly.
How soon? Could there be an agreement with another country for the Abraham Accords between now and the end of this calendar year?
Yes.
Wow.
I think there could be more than one, and it could be a different structure. But yes, I do believe, and I've been working on ideas with it and talking to some countries. But I think it won't be, I think the structure should be different. I don't think you should go for diplomatic relations. I think you should go for economic relations, create facts on the ground. Right. The people will see it, and the Saudis will come along. The problem is that they keep putting the emphasis on the Saudis, which builds local opposition, but also they can raise the price on it. And the MBS, the Crown Prince, is coming to the United States in a little over a week, I think. And it would be a very important visit. Saudi Arabia is still a key country in the region. They all welcome what Israel did. They want Israel to annihilate the terrorists and all the terrorist infrastructure and do the work for them. And, they don't love Qatar, despite the fact that they've learned to live with it. But, the memories and the fact that they are a Muslim Brotherhood state. And it's 300,000 people, remember, and we have a huge army base there. Air Force Base there. We have, and the linkage between Qatar and Turkey, another Muslim Brotherhood state, and the prominent role. And people in Israel, officials do acknowledge that Qatar, in some degree, made a contribution to this, but they're very wary of it because of their declarations and because of the philosophy and ideology behind it. The question that is debated most is whether the attack on Qatar led to the further developments or did not. Did it detract? With the United States being critical of it now, but is that a play just to the Qataris and the Arabs to show that they distanced themselves? They didn't do it. Israel did not violate the sovereignty by flying on land. They fired from the international waters, but they did hit the building. And there's a lot of debate about what was the intent, what was the outcome, et cetera. And I'm sure we'll be reading many books on this as well. So the Qatar role is still very controversial. Turkey's role even more controversial. They still want to dominate in Syria. I think Shara has at least publicly diminished the visibility of their role, but it certainly is not going to disappear. So there's still a lot of sources of instability, but it's a remarkable difference from a few months ago.
I got to do a little bit local before we go back, if we have time, to the Middle East. The race for mayor in New York has really created something that I don't think we've seen to this level before. You're a lot more experienced at this than I am, so you'll tell me if I'm right. And I'm curious if you think it's a good thing or not. Rabbinic leaders, people who are called rabbi, and I'm not saying that, in a degrading fashion. I'm just saying those who have the title rabbi, actually taking a public stand in an election. And again, I think, and you'll tell me if I'm right or wrong, that generally speaking, it is rare to see any type of rabbinic consensus when it comes to local elections. Maybe a little bit more on the national scene, rarely on the local scene. And by consensus, I mean the consensus to actually speak out publicly. Does this make you nervous? Especially since we really don't know 100% yet who's going to be the next mayor, etc. And obviously we want the mayor, whoever it is, to work with the Jewish community, etc. Are these rabbinic and leadership efforts getting too much publicity?
Wow, that's a lot of questions and not easy ones. First of all, it has happened before. We used to have competing ads of 200 signatories, then 400, then 800 rabbis. And that has diminished somewhat, and certainly it was less true. It was more on the national level, but there have been in previous races similar lists of endorsements by rabbis, quote rabbis. Many of them, have adopted titles. Right. And there are still a lot of rabbis who have not come out, who should be coming out. I think this race is different. We are going to the Flatbush Jewish Community Council, which I'm on our chair, is going to come out today and endorse Cuomo. And I think everybody should. It's not a question of endorsing Cuomo. It's a question of defeating Mamdano. And I know there are a lot of people who have agendas and concerns or historical grievances. Those are irrelevant today. Right now, we have somebody who will become a national symbol And he's not the only one. We have mayors around the country, and we've seen the impact of what it means. People dismiss it and say, well, what can a mayor do? He can do a great deal in terms of impacting locally, let alone threatening to arrest Netanyahu, or, what kind of policing there will be, what kind of protection. And I don't think we should shy away because of the possible implications. We are residents here. We have a right to demand and to be heard like every other group. And we have a bigger stake in it because of the rise of anti-Semitism, because this guy has association, and we can go through the whole history, the litany of things. People have heard it so many times. I think it's a disgrace that some of them have muddied the waters by greeting them and talking about our friend. There's no evidence that he is a friend. He refuses to condemn the most fundamental things that he should, and can say that he didn't use that exact word or that another word.
And the large gap in the polls does not have an effect on your opinion. In other words,
it's not because we're not going to be driven by polls. This is a matter of principle. This is a matter, and I do believe he can be beaten. I believe that if Curtis does drop out, I think if the voters who sit on their hands, pontificate but don't go out and vote, if they all turn out to vote, I think he can be beaten. I think there's a huge hidden vote that is not accounted for in the polls. And if you take Curtis's vote and you put it together with Cuomo, it doesn't mean that it will all transfer. But I think that it's within striking distance. And I think that there are a lot of people who will not say how they're voting, but will in the end not vote for Mamdano. If we are able to mobilize, we get people out to the votes. We've registered. There have been voter registration drives across the city in Jewish neighborhoods, and registered thousands in each neighborhood. There should have been tens of thousands. But I think collectively that the people will realize that he is offering pie-in-the-sky solutions to fundamental problems, let alone his appeal to the most racist elements. And look who he appears with. Look at the associations. And we know from around the country that it has real significance. And there are many mayors running, numerous mayors in New York State and around the country. There are people who reflect the same kind of point of view. This is not anti-Muslim. This is not anti-anybody. This is not a religious-based thing. This is based upon pure politics and the racist views and the refusal to stand up and defend and to identify Israel even as a Jewish state, and the criticism, the accusation of genocide, all the things that he will do, that coming out of City Hall, that, Mayor Adams can be criticized, but he was certainly staunchly supportive. And I think, we have to take a lot of lessons out of this. We should begin planning right now for the governor's races. We have to begin to plan to mobilize young people to make sure what the Sephardic community did about not selling seats and not allowing kids into school unless their parents showed they were registered. This has to become the rule, not the exception. And again, I think that those who play duplicitous politics and think that they're going to gain and benefit, and that Mamdano is going to be there. It's not going to be the case. When he's the mayor, and the policies that he introduces and the atmosphere that he creates and the tolerance for anti-Semitism and the revolving door justice, all of these will impact everybody, no matter what. And I think it's really a different election. And if you hear in my voice that a different message than I normally would give in a race like this, it's absolutely true. I don't think this is business as usual, and I hope that everybody listens. We'll go to 10 people and make sure that they're registered and they turn out. I think we have the last day of registration. I don't know if it passed through, but now the key thing is offer people a ride if they're elderly people or others who have a difficulty getting to the polling booths. We got to make sure that the turnout is there, not just the registration, and everybody. And if you have children in Israel, they can vote absentee. And there are a lot of things to do, and that's thousands and thousands of votes that could be registered for against Mamdano. This is a really serious thing. People, I know they when you talk about city council races, talking about other things, the fact is that they can pass resolutions, they can do a lot that can harm the quality of life, that can harm the atmosphere and exacerbate tensions at a time when they are elevated anyway.
One other thing from this side of the world, and that's the discovery in Louisiana by authorities of a man who was involved in the October 7th massacre. And, I generally get a, I generally know you're your opinion when it comes to immigration policy and whether someone like this should have been vetted better than he was. But this is pretty frightening that somebody who actually took part in a massive terror attack is found here in the United States.
It's 100% a reflection of the loose policies that were pursued. We knew, and I've talked on this show for how many years, many years, about the fact that we know that they're sending sleeper cells. Iran did, others did, other Arab terrorist organizations have been sending, Muslim terrorist organizations have been sending people into the United States on an ongoing basis. 10 years ago, guys on the border reported it, and I reported it on the show and talked about the concerns they were expressing in Laredo and places like that people were just crossing, that they found Arab military uniforms years ago in the deserts near New Mexico or Arizona, and the lackadaisical approach to all of this, and resulting in a huge population of unaccounted for people. But here is somebody who was so high profile, was known. How could he possibly slip through and then end up in a key position in a school? I mean, it's ridiculous. And one wonders then how many more there are. And we know, they tell us they have sleeper cells. China has, Iran has many who can be activated and can either do espionage or actually engage in physical violence.
Do you think the Knesset's going to survive all this? Because a couple of people dropped out of the coalition after what happened this week, and I know that we're getting toward the election campaign period, but you think there'll be early elections?
Well, what Shas did is they gave up their government positions, but they remained in the government, in the coalition, I do believe elections are going to take place. I think maybe next June, maybe even earlier. Depends. I think that this has run its course, and it was anyway due to dissolve next year.
Right.
So the question is, will Netanyahu continue to lead? We see a lot of disruptions within his government, the dismissal of Tzachi Hanegbi as National Security Advisor, others leaving or being dismissed. And the departure, I think, of Dermer is very significant, in terms of his role with the United States in other ways. I'm sure he'll continue to play an important role, but he certainly has given a lot to Israel. So there will be, I think, a movement towards an election.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Probably important.
By the way, the New York Times says that it's not unprecedented that the president of Israel wouldn't step in and issue some type of pardon. It happened once before, but it's very, very highly unlikely. Agree?
Well, first of all, I don't know if they can issue a pardon before you have a conviction.
Well, you can. It's just they say it's shunned upon to actually do it. Right. He did it once. So the president, his father did it once.
Right.
But that was for security purposes, he claimed.
Right. And that was an exception.
Right.
I mean, I was talking about normal rule, whether people issue dismissals, but and you know that Joe Biden did proactive ones, meaning that even for crimes afterwards, after the issuance. So, that's, I think, it's a little strange one. I think that the president is under tremendous pressure. And when the president did it publicly, everybody laughed, but it was a serious moment.
Right.
I thought for the president to both in one sense to say they interfered, in the other sense to say that he was giving a message that why would you introduce this element of instability over cigars and champagne. And whether it's more serious or not, the fact is that it's totally disruptive, that he has to spend days in the court. I don't think it would happen in other places. And we have to see whether President Herzog, and there's a lot of speculation that he would like to run for prime minister after his presidency. I don't know that that's true, but he's being much more active. And he did not speak, if you noticed, at the event. He was originally scheduled to, but he did not. And he was also going to announce that he was giving him the Medal of Honor, and then Bibi announced that he's giving the Israel Prize for the first time to a foreigner. For people who all of those who like to study the minutiae of government, there is so much, it's so overwhelming that, everybody was telling me, and I met with ministers and I met with others, while we were waiting for 4 hours to come down. They had a minyan at 6 a.m.
Oh, is that funny?
At the Knesset.
Oh, is that funny? People brought in
the
they brought in
people come with their lovin'. And they came at 6 a.m. I went to shul at 6 a.m. and I went later. I got permission to come. I came there.
Is there a sukkah at the Knesset?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
So you can even have a Hoshana Rabbah Suda if you wanted.
But I'm sure maybe I did see it on the second level, but that's where they hang out and smoke. The atmosphere was amazing. But first, when I got there, it was 8:30, 8:45, and we had to wait till 1 o'clock. And then the foreign minister called me down to come, and I spent an hour meeting with him, and I met with another minister because they were saying, "What are you sitting there? Come down and let's talk." And was actually very productive for me in that time. And then I went back in time, and we even got the Knesset made caps that said the President of Peace, and the back says the Knesset, which was really remarkable. They were all gone by the time I got back up there. And, and I'm sure you're going to see them on eBay.
Obviously.
And people wearing them to shul this Shabbos.
Malcolm may be doing a redirection himself and may have put his on eBay.
I'm not talking now.
I'm kidding around, but boy, unbelievable. I'd have to leave the building with that one. And then, of course, afterwards, I was concerned about you and others getting to where you needed to get to for Shmini Atzeres. Did that work out all right?
Yeah, there was no problems, actually. But getting out of Knesset, we were delayed because you can't leave until the president and his whole party left. And they, of course, dilly-dallied and getting out and was Erev Shabbos. So I didn't get home till after 4.
There's always something that I think you and I have in common, and that's, stopping and appreciating the moment. How crazy was it opening up your Shmini Atzeres on the high that you just described, thinking back to how you felt Shmini Atzeres morning 2 years earlier? It's
a subject for a whole show, but you're 100% right. First of all, I was so exhausted after that whole day of waiting and walking and standing and getting up and down to applaud.
And in general, Hoshana Rabbah is an exhausting day.
Beating those Hoshanas was tough there. And but absolutely, and that I was there in the beginning, the day after Yontiv. I was in Be'eri when they opened it. I was in Sderot. I was there and I saw all the blood and everything. So for me, the memories, and I consciously block it. I don't talk about it much, and I block it and have a hard time going back there and all of that. And I understand a little bit of what the people, have to do mentally to go back to their homes and I spoke to people from Be'eri and they invited me to an event, but I couldn't get there and get back in time for Yontiv. But the resilience and the, rebuilding and going back to places where the loved ones were slaughtered is beyond comprehension. The strength and we who live here and people really cared about the hostages, the remarkable things done and sustained over the 2 years. We don't even come close to 1% of it. Yeah. And I think we should all, Shabbos, celebrate them and remember them and continue to pray for the release of the rest of the hostages. It's not over yet. The bodies being returned is really vital. And if you meet the parents and the families of those, and the Gemara is right, that nobody can find rest until they find proper Gvura in Israel.
Yeah, understood. Well, we're way over time, but I got to be fair, as I said. I mean, unfortunately, one of the events you attended in Israel was the funeral. One, of course, took place here in Baltimore, then a short one in New York, and then, of course, eventually in Jerusalem for Rabbi Moshe Hauer, who you knew very well. Off the air, you spoke with me for quite a long time about what you thought of his work, his life, his demeanor, and his leadership in the Jewish world. Obviously, we don't have that kind of time, but you must tell this audience something about Rabbi Moshe Hauer, who we lost so suddenly over Yontif.
You talk about difficult assignments. To talk about him, as you know, I was at the Lebayan at the Shiva in Israel, right. And his wife showed such strength, and it was just a reflection of him and his kids as well. It's such a tragic loss. I'm telling you that people do not understand now what a loss it is for our community, the special role he played within the President's Conference, within the community at large, way beyond just the confines of the OU, let alone within the OU, the dignity he brought to it and his style on every element of what he was involved in. And when there were real crises, things that I can't talk about, I would call him and say, listen, we have a problem. There arise in different periods of certainly in my 60 years of doing this, there were people who rose above the moment and who were really critical, who could go into any setting and know that you would come out okay. And to make the case for the Frum communities, he did, earning the respect of the reform. You saw the tribute by the head of the reform movement, the other movements, people who were really hostile to us, and he turned them around, and in a very quiet and dignified way. It came to the point where they asked him to give the Devar Torah at the end of our executive council meetings of the conference every week, not others. And he would often sit and quietly, and I would get nervous, and then he would at the right time just come in and make the case, and sometimes really saying, I cannot go along with this. I can't abide it, but make the case as to why. He didn't try to dictate. He convinced. And I'm telling you, my son learned with him for 20 years, I think, in his shul. I didn't know him well. I had met him once or twice before he came to the OU, and I certainly was close to my son, Hanoch, and his family in Baltimore. But I'm telling you, from the first day I went and took him out for dinner and talked to him about the achrayus he had, the role, and believe me, he so far exceeded anything I could have asked for or expected. Wow. And I'm telling you, we don't know. There are giants who rise in time. I was thinking of it about Rabbi Herman Neuberger, Zechron Livracha, at his grandson's wedding in Israel, at the loss, the vacuum that individuals leave behind. And then they're not the people who go to the headlines and don't run to get notoriety and publicity. And often those who do really don't do anything except shoot off their mouth. These are the people who really do. And he did it all hours of the day and night. It would call me, and not only just about things related to the conference, but to some of the stuff or issues that arose, and asking what, not because he needed my wisdom, he was smarter than me, but because he would look for experience and he would learn from everybody and take it into account. So I'm just telling people, this is a loss for all of Klal Yisrael. It'll be a void, and we don't have many like him. We lost too many people in the last couple of months. I mean, people who were important to our community, and I would say he, above all, was such an inspiration. People, I'm telling you, who are hostile to the Frum community and would express it on meetings and things, muted it and turned around, and some of them even learned with him.
Amazing.
I'm telling you, the leaders, not talking about people who are peripheral to the community.
Respectful personal relationship is a key element to leadership, and you've seen that a million times over the years, and I'm glad you pointed that and other things out about Rabbi Hauer. Thank you, Malcolm. We'll speak, please. Have a wonderful Shabbos, and we'll speak, please, God, next week. Malcolm Hoenlein with us. Weekly update, Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. Friday morning, Erev Shabbos. I know we're way over time, but this was an important conversation.